Welcome to this latest video on the nowRail model railway control system, and this video is going to be about the 1.4.4 updates. Now there are a few updates in this latest version. Some of them are some quite major changes, so let's start to look at what has been changed. Now, as always, if you click on the link below the video, it will take you over to the nowRail resource page. And there are some information there about the latest version, but let's go through these bit by bit. And the first thing I'm going to go through is a piece that has been removed from nowRail. So going over to the workbench, when I started the work on nowRail, the main boards that I were using was the ESP32 dev module. And they're quite a big board, and I'd always wondered about what it would be like to try and fit one in as a loco decoder. And because of the size, I built into the code the ability to use these boards. This is the ESP8266D1 Mini. And the reason I was trying to keep these in the code was that they were quite small and could be used on various projects. However, as time has gone on, because when I started nowRail, these C3 boards were brand new and I hadn't really had enough time to test them thoroughly. I've now used them with nowRail endlessly and they're fine. But obviously these boards are much smaller than the D1 Mini. The D1 Mini has huge restrictions on memory. So from this version onwards, there is no support for the ESP8266. It had become so limited in its usage in nowRail that it's time to just get rid of it and simplify the code. Now, if you're sat as someone at home who's got a layout that's using an ESP8266 within their nowRail code, don't panic. Because of the backwards compatibility, if you've already built it in a previous version of nowRail, it will continue to work just as it does, but it means that you won't be able to access some of the newer features that are now being added to nowRail. Now, going back to the resource page, a couple of other very small mods. There is a new function to do with setting the pins on a 74HC595NP. These are the shift registers, the shift outs, and some people use these for the LEDs on their control panel. Now, I was building a project recently where I was controlling a traverser where, if you like, I wanted one LED to come on and 4 to go off, and that currently wasn't available within nowRail. So this function now allows you to individually change a particular pin on a chip and set it to whatever state you want, so that it's now possible to do that. Very few people are going to use it, but it's now in there. There were some other mods that were made to do with setting loco DCC addresses, names, and function states. And I noticed, again, working on a particular project in a particular way, that they were restricted and only would work when EEPROM was active within the system. So they have now been set so that EEPROM is no longer required. So those are the small mods that are going to impact virtually no one. Now let's have a look at the big mods. And this is to do with Wi-Fi channels, encryption, and the ability to even switch Wi-Fi channel in real time. So let's have a look at how this works. So if we take the latest version of nowRail, just go down to the nowRail user setup.h. This has been revamped slightly. Someone got in touch with me, thanks Andrew for getting in touch with me, about the way some of the system was set up. And as bits of that been added over the years, let's say the order was maybe not as intuitive as it should be. So I've upgraded the user setup. Now not only do you have the different items, but I've actually put links where possible to videos or resources that will tell you what that particular item means. Now, the big items that have been changed are these ones at the top. and this is the Wi-Fi channel encryption and the Wi-Fi master clock change. So let's go through these one at a time. ESP-NOW by default, for those who don't know, with Wi-Fi there's what, I think 11 or 12 channels. The important thing to understand with Wi-Fi is there are only 3 channels that are really good channels to use. That's channels 1, 6 and 11. Now the reason for that is that each channel overlaps channels to either side, but if you use 1, 6 or 11 they will not interfere with each other. So by default, ESP-NOW defaults to channel 1, or if your ESP32 is connected to an access point, so you're connected to Wi-Fi, it will then default to the channel that the access point is on. Now, up until now, I've never bothered with the channels. I've always used the default. But after some discussions on the merge sort of forum, there were some things that came up about various channels. And so what I've now allowed is the ability to set your layout channel. So you can set this to a value of only 1, 6 or 11. Now, for most people, this isn't going to matter. You're just going to leave it on channel 1. So don't panic about it. But if you're in a certain environment, or maybe you're using the default address and your next door neighbor's using the default address, then it might be useful if you were on different channels. So that doesn't affect any form of backwards compatibility. Now, the next item does affect backwards compatibility. And this is to do with the way that nowRail transmits data. Because it's using a broadcast system, basically you can pick up the broadcast on another ESP32 if you wanted to and see what is being transmitted. Now, in nowRail, each layout has a unique code. And the reason for this unique code is to stop transmissions from one layout impacting another layout. So the goal with the encryption is when the transmissions take place, part of the transmission, which is the layout address, gets encrypted on every transmission, and the values change on every transmission. Now, I did a recent video on ESP-NOW broadcast mode encryption, so I'm not going to go into what is going on there. But needless to say, encryption is now available, and if you're starting a new project, I would advise you to have encryption set as on by default. Now, the odds of someone trying to hack your model railway are pretty slim, but if you like, I'm trying to work ahead on these things. Now, the final change is the Wi-Fi master clock change. Now, this came about after a discussion again on one of the merge forums, and it was to do with the fact that at certain exhibitions, sometimes Wi-Fi controlled layouts have had problems due to the number of mobile phones and, if you like, other interference from other Wi-Fi systems. Now, the way that ESP-NOW works is slightly different in that with a Wi-Fi, a conventional Wi-Fi signal, it reaches out to the router box, it does a bit of a handshake, it says who it is, they get to know each other, and then they start speaking to each other. With ESP-NOW, it's a little bit more of a brute force. It's a bit like a radio station. It's going to transmit its command regardless of who is listening. It's just going to send it out, and if you're tuned into the right station, you can pick it up. However, just in case there is the theoretical idea that a particular Wi-Fi channel can be blocked or overloaded, I have now added a feature to nowRail that allows you to change the Wi-Fi channel in real time. Now, this realistically is rarely going to be used except on some big exhibition layouts, or where two people have turned up with the default address on their layouts and one of them needs to quickly change channel. The advantage of this system is if you had to go around and change the Wi-Fi channel on all your boards, that means actually introducing code and, if you like, updating the code. With this one, you can literally press a button and the change takes place. So let's have a look at that in action. So going over to the workbench, we have got my DCC-EX base station, nowRail hand controller, and over here I've just got a board running the 1.4.4 version of the software. All of these by default are on channel 1. Now what happens with the system? The master clock must be running on one board. Now I run my master clock off my DCC-EX base station. The reason I run the master clock off this one is my layout doesn't work without the master clock, without DCC-EX, because I couldn't run anything. So that's where I tend to keep my master clock. Also, I use an EEPROM on my master clock board, so when the layout is turned off, it remembers the time that the layout was last set at when I switch the board off, so I can run to a timetable. So all of these are running on channel 1. Now if I then go into the new settings panel, so there is also a new version of the hand controller code that is out. If I now select channel 11, this will now send out a message, but it will only be processed by something that has the system set to have a change and also is running the master clock. So the command was received by all 3 boards, but this board would be the only board that processes it. Now once this board has processed it, it instantly changes channel and it starts broadcasting on the new channel, which of course these boards are no longer going to pick up. So what happens with these boards is if they don't get a master clock signal for 3 seconds, they immediately swap to the next channel and they will go through channels 1, 6 and 11 until they find the master clock with the layout code for this particular layout. Now this may sound a bit of a weird way of doing it. You'd think, well, why don't you just press the button and update all the boards? Well, the problem is, let's imagine that this board down here is being used as a loco decoder. So this at the moment is in the box. The layout, the loco is not on the track. It then comes out later after the Wi-Fi channels have been changed. It will never receive the command. But if it has the ability to change channel, as soon as it comes out of the box and is powered up, the ESP-NOW system will suddenly go, hang on a minute, I'm not hearing from the master clock, therefore I'm going to check the other channels and see what is going on. So coming over to the IDE, I have the 3 boards that are on the workbench. On the left hand side, we have my DCC-EX base station, which in my case is the master clock. If I just stop the scrolling, we can see that it does a master clock, which is the internal master clock only running on that board, because you should only have one item that is the master clock. And then we have the transmission that it then sends out over nowRail, which gives the latest clock speed and the time and even the day. The other boards are just receiving that diagnostic as it comes through, and if they wanted to process that time, they can do it. Now the reason that the master clock needs to be on is that we need that heartbeat pulse. Now one of the odd things is it doesn't matter if the clock is not even incrementing. If you've got the clock set to 0, so if I go over to the settings, if I now set the clock to 0, the clock is now stopped and it's stopped at 17 seconds, but that information is still being sent out. So you don't actually need the master clock being used to send time. It's just being used to send out a heartbeat signal for any other boards to lock onto. What I'm now going to do is change channel. So settings, Wi-Fi channel, and I'm going to go for channel 11 because I know the boards are on channel 1. Let's just click that. And yes, that looks like it is working perfectly. Let's just put the scroll back on. There we go, that'll do. Let's stop it there. So now we're going to look at the diagnostics to see what happened. So we can see we've got master clock, time update, master clock, time update. We then have a diagnostic that is received, that a Wi-Fi channel command was received, and that was asking the master clock board to swap to channel 11. Now this happened at 34.01 and some milliseconds. Now at the same time, on the little ESP32C3, it received exactly the same command, but you'll notice the channel that it thinks it's got to change to is a 0. Now, this isn't an error. This is actually the system saying you are not the master clock, so you are not changing channel. The only board that changed channel was the master clock. Now, if we look at the time here, what then happened with that board? It waited 3 seconds and it suddenly says, hang on, I've lost the master clock. So it immediately starts looking for the layout on channel 6. It then couldn't find it on channel 6, so it then jumped to channel 11. And so we can now see that a few seconds later, the system has found its correct layout and is now going to continue to run on channel 11. So going back to the nowRail user setup file, let's just have a look at the differences between the two boards. We've got my DCC-EX base station on the left. We have got just the basic nowRail sketch on the right. So with both of them, we're starting off with channel 1. Both of these are using encryption. You do not need encryption turned on for this to work. You can have encryption turned off. But of course, if you want this facility to run on all your boards, unfortunately, you're going to have to upgrade to the latest version for everything. So if you've got an older system that's already running, just comment out all of these. But if you're going to use it, all boards will need these lines enabled. The Wi-Fi channel ideally should be the same. I've got diagnostics on for both boards. So that is all that is required for any board on the system. The difference comes with the master clock board. That must have the master clock feature enabled. That's about it. The rest of it is just my serial and the DCC-EX commands. That is all that is required for my DCC base station. But the big difference is whichever board you decide is going to be your master clock, that Wi-Fi master clock change must be enabled, but also the master clock must be set as on. All the other boards do not need the master clock and should not have the master clock. Otherwise, you're going to have two master clocks, which is a bit weird. So those are the main changes to nowRail. So obviously there is a new version of the code for the hand controller that's downloadable, and obviously the new version of the nowRail itself is downloadable. For most users, just leave the settings on default, and if you want to have that change system, I would make sure that you've got a board turned on as the master clock. I'll be honest, I would advise everybody to have one board set as master clock, even if you don't want to use it. So that's it for this episode. Some updates there just to make nowRail a little bit more bulletproof in various scenarios. Now, going forwards with nowRail, obviously development continues. I do a lot of testing, not only on the workbench, but on my own layout. And I do need to get some more work done on the layout. And I will look at adding some more features in the future. At the moment, I'm going to leave it for a little bit because I've had a request to update some of the old tutorials because I hadn't realized just how out of date some of the videos have got. So you'll probably see a number of very short videos coming out just dealing with certain sections of nowRail. Also, I'm planning to do some different projects with nowRail to show how different things would be set up. So if you have a particular project or a particular question that you want to know, just email me off the Digital Town site or leave a message under the video in the comments section, and I can see what can be done to produce videos to work through certain scenarios. So that's it for this video. nowRail has been toughened up, it's been made a little bit more flexible, and it's got a sort of a get out of jail card now available as well. So that's it for today, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.